This channel won't survive without your subscription and likes. Help me. A tourist spilled coffee on a guardsman's helmet, believing that his money gave him the right to do anything. But the guardsman's reaction shocked everyone. What happened next changed everything. Let's start from the very beginning. London. Buckingham Palace. As always, tourists filled the streets, capturing every corner of this historical landmark. Fresh air, ancient buildings, and there it was, the Royal Guard, a symbol of grandeur and unshakable tradition. The guardsman stood still, clad in a red uniform with a towering bearskin hat, just as always. He stood proudly, rigid like a rock in the ocean of modern tourists. His eyes held not even the faintest glimmer of emotion. His face was hidden, but hidden behind pride. To most people glued to their phones, this was just another part of the tourist spectacle. Everyone here was after something. Everything here was for them. How much did they pay for their tickets? Probably enough to believe they owned the experience. To them, the guardsman was just part of the scenery. A tourist in a sports jacket, jeans, and a flashy logo approached the guardsman with a smug grin, as if he were in control. "Hey, man! Smile! Can't you see how happy everyone is to see you?" he said loudly, his arrogance shining through his sunglasses. The crowd held its breath, waiting for a reaction. But the guardsman remained still, enduring it. The tourist didn't back down. "Seriously, aren't you tired of standing there like a statue?" The audience chuckled and recorded on their phones. This, to them, was real entertainment. They felt like kings of this stage. And the guardsman? He stood firm. Stood and likely thought, "Seriously? He thinks his money buys my dignity?" Seeing that his taunts weren't having the desired effect, the tourist took it up a notch. He smirked and circled behind the guardsman. His expression made it clear this wasn't just about having fun. He wanted to prove his power. "Well, since you're so quiet, let's at least put on a little show for the crowd," he shouted, brushing against the guardsman's shoulder, nearly touching his bearskin hat. Some tourists laughed, their amusement echoing above the murmurs of the crowd. But the guardsman remained as unshaken as ever. His gaze was cold and firm, like the London sky that day. He knew his strength wasn't in reacting physically, but in standing tall against such provocations. But the tourist wasn't finished. He raised his coffee cup, almost as if it had been his plan all along, and poured the hot liquid straight onto the guardsman's helmet. The laughter grew louder, yet the reactions in the crowd became mixed. Some chuckled, others murmured in disapproval. But most people's faces showed it. This was not okay. "There you go, now that's entertainment," the tourist cackled, watching as the coffee trickled down the glossy surface of the bearskin hat. The guardsman didn't flinch. He didn't yell, he didn't push the man away. He simply remained steadfast in his duty. The humiliation was undeniable, but his pride remained intact. And the crowd? The same crowd that once cheered the tourist began shifting in discomfort. Some voices rose in protest. "Who does that? That's just wrong," someone whispered nearby. People started turning against the tourist, who was still reveling in his moment, oblivious to the fact that his actions were starting to spark outrage. But no, he didn't care. In his world, money was power. To him, the Royal Guard was nothing more than a set piece for his amusement, and he had the right to do whatever he pleased. After all, he was a tourist. Thinking he was untouchable, the tourist continued pushing boundaries. He basked in the attention, capturing everything on his camera. But then, something unexpected happened. A small child walking nearby misstepped and tumbled to the ground. The crowd gasped. Everyone noticed. Everyone except one person, the guardsman. The same man who had just endured mockery and humiliation suddenly broke from his rigid stance. His movements were swift, confident. Despite his duty to remain motionless, he rushed forward to help the child. He was willing to abandon his post for something greater than pride. His actions sent a clear message: respect and care for others rise above all provocations. As the guardsman helped the child back up, the tourist didn't miss his chance. He raised his camera, ready to capture this moment for his own gain. In his eyes, this was his victory. He had made the guardsman break protocol. But then, the guardsman turned to him, and for the first time his gaze wasn't cold indifference. It was something else. Determination. Do you think you can manipulate respect for tradition just because you hold a phone? The guardsman's voice was calm but sharp as ice. Or is your entertainment found in humiliating others? The crowd fell silent. The tourist, caught off guard, froze. For the first time, he realized that instead of admiration, he had earned nothing but disgrace. It's time to learn to respect what truly matters, the guardsman added, adjusting his helmet before returning to his post, his posture once again unshakable. At that moment, the tourist felt his confidence crumble. He was no longer in control. The crowd, once his audience, had turned against him. His camera, once his trophy, was now nothing more than a pathetic reminder of his failure. The video of the incident, recorded on the tourist's own camera, spread like wildfire online. Public outrage erupted. The man who thought he had won now found himself the target of widespread condemnation. The same audience that had laughed at his antics now couldn't hide their disgust. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Don't you dare disrespect those who protect our history!" The tide had turned. The tourist was escorted off the premises, and soon after, security arrived. After reviewing the situation, police fined him for disorderly conduct and disrespecting British cultural symbols. What he had considered harmless fun had now turned into a global embarrassment. And the guardsman? He returned to his position, his back straight, his posture as dignified as ever. Once again he stood at his post as if nothing had happened. But this time, when the cameras captured his face, there was something different, a faint shadow of satisfaction. This was a victory, not for anger, not for retaliation, but for dignity. The crowd broke into applause. Among the cheers, the guardsman felt something deeper than respect. He felt validation. Tradition lives as long as we stand for it, he thought, adjusting his hat and resuming his duty. Through the noise, the cameras, and the countless people, his gaze remained steady, because now, more than ever, he knew that respect for culture was something no amount of money could buy.